crash and the choice. Jake Martinez wiped the sweat from his forehead as he crawled out from beneath the atmospheric processor, his coveralls stained with coolant fluid and metal shavings. The mining station on asteroid Kepler 442b wasn't glamorous, but it paid well enough to support his sister's medical school back on Earth. At 28, Jake had spent the last 5 years maintaining the equipment that kept 43 miners alive in the vacuum of space. The night shift was always quiet. Most of the crew slept while the automated systems continued their endless excavation of rare minerals. Jake preferred it this way, no supervisors breathing down his neck, no constant chatter over the comm system. Just him and the machines that he understood better than most people understood their own families. He was checking the oxygen recycler readings when the first explosion shook the station. Emergency lights bathed the maintenance bay in red as Jake grabbed his emergency kit and headed for the observation deck. Through the reinforced windows, he saw something that made his heart stop. A massive ship was spiraling toward the asteroid's surface, trailing debris and what looked like atmosphere. The vessel was unlike anything in the human fleet, sleek and organic looking, with a hull that seemed to shift colors like oil on water. Jake watched in stunned silence as the ship crashed into the rocky terrain 3 kilometers from the station, sending up a plume of dust and debris. His training kicked in immediately. Jake activated the emergency beacon and began suiting up for EVE extravehicular activity. If there were survivors, they wouldn't last long in the asteroid's harsh environment. He grabbed the medical kit, breathing apparatus, and portable power cells, then headed for the airlock. The journey to the crash site took 20 minutes across the treacherous terrain. Jake's boots crunched on the metallic surface as he approached the alien vessel. Up close, it was even more impressive, easily 3 times the size of the station's transport shuttle, with technology that seemed decades ahead of anything humanity had developed. A breach in the ship's hull glowed with emergency lighting. Jake checked his atmospheric scanner somehow. The ship was maintaining a breathable atmosphere despite the damage. He squeezed through the opening and found himself in a corridor that curved gently upward, lit by strips of bioluminescent material. The smell hit him first, ozone mixed with something sweet and medicinal. Then he heard it, a sound like wind, chimes crossed with whale song. Following the noise, Jake made his way deeper into the ship until he found the source. The being was humanoid, but clearly not human. About his height, but more slender, with pale blue skin that seemed to shimmer in the ship's strange lighting. Her head was elongated, with large, dark eyes that tracked his movement. Most striking were the fine, silver filaments that grew from her scalp-like hair but moved independently, as if alive. She was lying beside what appeared to be a control console. One hand pressed against her chest, while the other worked weakly at some kind of device. When she saw Jake, her eyes widened, and she made that wind chime sound again. "Easy," Jake said, raising his hands to show he meant no harm. "I'm here to help." The being's mouth didn't move, but somehow Jake heard words in his head. "Human. You should not be here. The plague, ... It spreads, ... Jake looked around and realized what he was seeing. Other beings lay scattered throughout the chamber, some motionless, others moving weakly. They were all sick, maybe dying. "What plague?" Jake asked, kneeling beside the blue-skinned being. "What happened to your ship?" "I am Zara," the voice in his head said, "engineer of the Celestial Wanderer. We carry ... refugees from the Vexery invasion. They used biological weapons. Our immune systems cannot fight it." Jake's mind raced. He'd studied xenobiology as part of his engineering training, mostly theoretical. Since humanity had never made contact with alien life. But the principles might be similar. "How long do you have?" he asked. Double quotes, "hours, ... perhaps less. The ship's medical systems are failing. We try to reach the nearest inhabited world, but..." Zara's mental voice faded as she coughed, a sound like crystal bells breaking. Jake examined the device she'd been working on. It looked like some kind of medical scanner, but the readings were in symbols he couldn't understand. However, the patterns looked familiar: vital signs, blood chemistry, cellular activity, universal constants of biology. Your ship does it. Have a fabrication unit, something that can synthesize compounds. Zara's eyes focused on him with difficulty. Yes, ... but the biosynthesizer requires molecular templates. We do not have templates for treatments that work on our physiology. Jake's pulse quickened. But you have templates for the plague itself, right? The bio open, of course. For analysis. Then we can work backward. Jake stood up, his mind already formulating a plan. In human medicine, we sometimes use the enemy's own weapons against them. If I can understand how this plague works, maybe I can figure out how to stop it. For the next several hours, Jake worked with a determination he'd never felt before. Zara guided him through the ship's systems, her mental voice growing weaker but never giving up. The alien technology was incredibly advanced, but Jake's human perspective proved valuable in ways neither of them had expected. Where the alien medical systems had tried to fight the plague directly, Jake suggested a different approach. The ship's own immune responses, but redirecting them. Instead of trying to destroy the bioweapon, they would teach the aliens' bodies to ignore it. Your people's immune systems are too perfect, Jake explained as he worked at the biosynthesizer. They recognize the plague as a threat and attack it, but the plague is designed to use that response to spread. What if we could make your immune system think the plague isn't worth fighting? Impossible, Zara whispered. The immune response is automatic. Not if we give it something else to focus on. Jake's fingers flew over the alien controls, adapting human concepts to alien technology. We introduce a harmless but easily identifiable compound, something your immune system will see as a bigger threat than the plague. While it's busy fighting the decoy, the plague loses its ability to spread. The process took 6 hours. 6 hours of Jake learning alien biochemistry while Zara fought to stay conscious long enough to guide him. 6 hours of watching other beings around them grow still and silent. 6 hours of knowing that if he failed, an entire species of refugees would die. Finally, the biosynthesizer chimed with completion. Jake held up a small vial of pale green liquid, the first medicine ever created by human hands for alien biology. "This better work," he muttered, then injected the contents into Zara's arm through what he hoped was the equivalent of a vein. For long minutes, nothing happened. Then, slowly, the shimmer returned to Zara's skin. Her breathing steadied. The silver filaments in her hair began to move more actively. "It works," she whispered, this time speaking aloud in accented but clear English. "The plague... It's weakening." "How did you know?" "I didn't," Jake admitted. "I just knew that every problem has a solution if you look at it from the right angle." As they worked to treat the other survivors, Jake learned more about the Celestial Wanderer and its crew. They were refugees from a war between the peaceful Cathara and the aggressive Vexari. The Vexari had used biological weapons to destroy entire worlds, and the Cathara were fleeing to safer regions of the galaxy. But the vexery will not stop, Zara explained as she helped Jake treat the ship's captain, a distinguished-looking Kithara named Venda. They follow us, consuming everything in their path. Your world, ... your people, ... They are not safe, Jake felt a chill that had nothing to do with the ship's damaged climate control. How long before they get here? The Wanderer was leading them away from populated systems. But our crash here, the energy signatures, they will investigate. Perhaps 2 of your days. As if responding to her words, the ship's central AI spoke in a melodious voice that filled the chamber. Medical emergency resolved. Crew survival. Probability elevated to 87%. Initiating command protocol assessment. Jake looked around in confusion. What's it doing? Venda, now conscious and recovering, spoke with a voice like distant thunder. The ship's AI is designed to ensure survival of the crew above all else. When the command structure fails, it seeks the individual most capable of preserving life. But you're the captain, Jake protested. You're recovering now. I am recovering because of your actions, Venda replied. The AI has been observing. It recognizes that your unique perspective and abilities saved lives that our own medicine could not. In the face of the coming threat, it must choose the individual most likely to ensure our survival. The AI's voice filled the chamber again. Analysis complete. Jake Martinez, of Earth, you have demonstrated exceptional problem-solving capabilities, cross-species adaptability, and commitment to preservation of life. By the laws of the Celestial Wanderer, you are hereby designated as acting captain in time of crisis. Jake's heart pounded. Wait, what? I can't be a captain. I'm just a maintenance engineer. You are the individual who solved an impossible problem, Zara said, placing a hand on his shoulder. You saw solutions where we saw only death. The ship's AI is not wrong. We face an enemy that requires new thinking, human thinking. But I don't know anything about space combat or alien technology. You know how to fix things, Venda said, struggling to sit up. You know how to find solutions where others see only problems. And most importantly, you know how to save lives. These are the qualities of a true captain. The ship's AI spoke once more. Vexery fleet detected on approach vector. Estimated arrival, 37 hours. Acting Captain Martinez, what are your orders? Jake looked around at the recovering aliens, then at the complex alien technology surrounding him. 2 days ago, his biggest worry had been a faulty atmospheric processor. Now he was being asked to save an entire species from extinction. He thought about his sister back on Earth, about the miners sleeping peacefully in the station, about the billions of humans who had no idea that a war between alien species was about to reach their doorstep. All right, Jake said, his voice growing. Stronger. First, we get this ship operational. Then we warn my people about what's coming. And then, he paused, looking at the hopeful faces around him. Then we figure out how to stop an alien invasion using human ingenuity and whatever alien technology we can manage. As the ship's systems hummed to life around him, Jake Martinez realized that his life as a simple maintenance engineer was over. Whether he liked it or not, he was now the captain of an alien starship, responsible for the lives of refugees from across the galaxy, and possibly humanity's only hope against an enemy none of them understood. The wind chime sound of Cathara communication filled the air as the crew began to move with purpose. Jake didn't understand their language yet, but he didn't need to. He understood the universal language of determination, of people who refused to give up in the face of impossible odds. It was time to show the galaxy what humans could do when they set their minds to it. The Battle and the Bonjek stood on the bridge of the Celestial Wanderer, staring at the holographic display that showed 3 massive ships approaching their position. The Vexery fleet had arrived 18 hours earlier than expected, their dark, angular vessels bristling with weapons that could reduce the mining station to atoms in seconds. "They're not responding to our communication attempts," Zara reported from the tactical station. Her recovery had been remarkable, but Jake could see the tension in her movements. "Standard Vexery protocols, they will demand surrender, then attack regardless of our response." Vender, still weak but insisting on being present, leaned heavily on his command staff. "The Wanderer's weapons systems are operational, but we are outnumbered 3 to 1. Each of their ships carries enough firepower to destroy a small moon." Jake studied the tactical display, his mind working through possibilities. The Vexery ships were moving in perfect formation, their approach calculated and methodical. Everything about them screamed superior technology and military precision. "How do they usually fight?" Jake asked. "Overwhelming force," Vender replied. "They rely on superior numbers and technology. Few species can match their tactical capabilities." "But they've never fought humans before," Jake said, a plan beginning to form in his mind. "Zara, can you show me the asteroid field between us and the mining station?" The holographic display shifted to show the rocky debris field that surrounded Kepler 4 for 2b. Jake had navigated those asteroids dozens of times in mining shuttles, knew every major rock and gravitational anomaly. "The Vexery will expect us to either flee or make a direct attack," Jake continued. "What if we do something they don't expect?" "What do you mean?" Zara asked. "In human history, when faced with a superior enemy, smaller forces often won by using their environment to their advantage. We call it guerrilla warfare." Jake pointed to the densest part of the asteroid field. "Those rocks aren't just obstacles, they're weapons if we use them right." The bridge fell silent as Jake outlined his plan. Instead of engaging the Vexery in open space where their superior firepower would dominate, the Wanderer would lure them into the asteroid field. Using the ship's superior maneuverability and Jake's knowledge of the local space, they would turn the rocks themselves into projectiles. "It's madness," Vender whispered. "The gravitational stresses alone could tear the ship apart." "Maybe," Jake admitted, "but staying here and fighting conventionally is certain death. At least this way, we have a chance." The first challenge came immediately. Jake had never piloted anything larger than a mining shuttle, and the Wanderer was a kilometer-long starship, with controls designed for alien hands. But Zara worked beside him, her fingers flying over the pilot interfaces while she translated his commands into actions the ship could understand. "Vexery fleet hailing us," reported Kess. "The communications officer, they're demanding our surrender." "Tell them we're considering it," Jake said. "Buy us time to get into position." The Wanderer began moving toward the asteroid field, its engines humming with barely contained power. Jake felt the ship respond to his commands, and for a moment, he understood what Zara had meant about the ship's AI choosing him. The vessel seemed to anticipate his intentions, making micro-adjustments to his piloting that kept them on course. "They're not buying it," Kess reported. "Vexery Commander is giving us 2 minutes to surrender before they open fire." "Then we better make those 2 minutes count," Jake muttered, pushing the ship's engines to maximum. The Wanderer shot forward, diving into the asteroid field just as the first Vexery weapons fired. The space around them erupted in deadly energy as the Vexery ships pursued. Their weapons were incredibly powerful, but in the asteroid field they became a liability. Each missed shot shattered rocks, creating clouds of debris that interfered with their sensors. "Now," Jake shouted as the Wanderer swept around a massive asteroid. Zara fired the ship's weapons, not at the Vexry vessels, but at the carefully selected rocks Jake had identified. The asteroids, already stressed by the gravity of the mining operation, cracked and broke apart exactly as Jake had calculated. The lead Vexry ship, moving at full speed, couldn't avoid the cascade of debris. Rocky fragments peppered its hull, overloading its shields and forcing it to slow down. The other two ships were forced to break formation to avoid the same fate. "Incredible," Vender breathed. "You turned their own aggression against them." But Jake wasn't finished. He'd spent years studying the gravitational patterns of the asteroid field, knew how the rocks moved and interacted. As the Vexry ships struggled to maintain formation in the debris field, Jake led them deeper into the maze of stone and metal. There, he pointed to a cluster of asteroids held in delicate gravitational balance. "If we can destabilize that formation," Zara understood immediately. She fired precisely at the central asteroid, and the entire cluster began to collapse inward. The second Vexry ship, caught in the gravitational anomaly, found itself being pulled toward the collapsing rocks. "Their shields are failing," Kess reported. "The gravitational stress is tearing their hull apart." The second ship tried to escape, but the gravitational collapse was too strong. It was crushed between two massive asteroids, its death lighting up the asteroid field like a new star. But the victory came at a cost. The Wanderer had taken several hits, and alarms were blaring throughout the ship. "Hull breach on Deck 7. Zara called out. "We're losing atmosphere." Jake made a decision. That would haunt him for years to come. Instead of retreating to make repairs, he pushed the ship deeper into the asteroid field, toward the most dangerous region he knew, a place where the gravitational forces were so chaotic that even the automated mining equipment couldn't operate safely. "Acting Captain, this is suicide," Vender warned. "The ship cannot survive those gravitational shears." "Neither can they," Jake replied, as the remaining two Vexry ships continued their pursuit. "But we know what we're getting into. They don't." The next few minutes were the longest of Jake's life. The Wanderer twisted and turned through impossible gravitational currents, its hull groaning under stresses that should have torn it apart. Jake's hands moved over the controls with desperate precision, making split-second decisions that kept them just ahead of catastrophic failure. Behind them, the Vexry ships struggled to keep up. Their superior technology was useless in an environment that demanded instinct and intimate knowledge of local conditions. The third ship, trying to match Jake's impossible maneuvers, was caught in a gravitational eddy and spun helplessly into a cluster of iron-rich asteroids. That left one enemy ship, the largest and most heavily armed. Their commander is skilled. Zara observed as the final Vexry vessel matched their movements through the gravitational maze. "They're adapting to our tactics." Jake looked at the tactical display, then at the faces of the crew who had put their trust in him. These beings had already lost their homes, their families, everything they'd ever known. They deserved better than to die in a remote asteroid field forgotten by the galaxy. "All right," Jake said, his voice steady despite the terror in his heart. "Time for the most human tactic of all." "What's that?" Zara asked. "When you can't win by being smarter or stronger, you win by being willing to sacrifice everything." Jake turned the Wanderer around, heading directly toward the final Vexry ship. The alien vessel, surprised by the sudden change in tactics, fired everything it had. Energy beams lanced out, striking the Wanderer's shields and hull. Shields failing, Kess shouted. Hull integrity at 30%. Hold course, Jake ordered, his hands steady on the controls. He was betting everything on a single moment, a single choice that would determine the fate of everyone aboard both ships. At the last possible second, Jake fired the Wanderer's engines in full reverse while simultaneously activating the ship's emergency gravity generators. The sudden deceleration created a gravitational anomaly that caught the Vexery ship like a trap, but the maneuver nearly destroyed the Wanderer as well. The ship's hull cracked, atmosphere venting into space through a dozen breaches. Jake found himself fighting to stay conscious as the bridge lost pressure, emergency containment failing. Zara gasped, her voice barely audible in the thin air. "We need to abandon ship." "No," Jake said, struggling to his feet. "We can fix this. We always fix things." For the next several hours, Jake worked alongside the Cathara crew to repair their ship. His human engineering knowledge, combined with their advanced technology, proved to be exactly what was needed. While Zara handled the complex electronics, Jake sealed hull breaches with materials that shouldn't have worked but did. Where the aliens saw irreparable damage, Jake saw creative solutions. "I don't understand," Venda said as they worked. "Your species has barely achieved interstellar flight. How do you know so much about starship repair?" "Because humans have been fixing broken things since we learned to make tools," Jake replied, welding a makeshift patch over a hull breach. "We break everything we touch, so we get really good at putting it back together." By the time they finished repairs, the last Vexery ship had been destroyed by the gravitational forces Jake had unleashed. The threat was over, but Jake knew it was only temporary. More Vexery would come, and next time they would be prepared for human tactics. "The mining station," Jake said suddenly. "We need to evacuate my people." "Already done," Zara reported. "While you were unconscious, Captain Venda sent a message to your authorities. Your people are being relocated to safer systems." Jake felt a wave of relief wash over him. His sister, his co-workers, everyone he'd ever known would be safe. But the relief was mixed with sadness as he realized what this meant. "I can't go back, can I?" he asked. "The Vexery will not stop," Venda said gently. "They will come to Earth, eventually. But with our knowledge of their tactics and your unique perspective, we might be able to prepare your people. We might be able to stop them." "The ship's AI has made its decision," Zara added. "You are no longer acting captain. You are simply captain. The Wanderer is yours to command." Jake looked around the bridge at the alien technology he was learning to understand, at the crew who had accepted him despite his strange origins, at the stars visible through the main viewport. Somewhere out there, the Vexery were regrouping, planning their next attack, and somewhere else, humanity was just beginning to understand that they were not alone in the universe. "All right," Jake said, settling into the captain's chair that had been modified for his human physiology. "Let's go save the galaxy." As the celestial wanderer turned toward the stars, Jake Martinez, former maintenance engineer, now captain of an alien starship, began planning for the greatest challenge of his life. The Vexery thought they knew everything about warfare, about technology, about the inevitability of conquest. They were about to learn what humans could do when they refused to accept defeat. The ship's AI spoke one final time. "Course laid in, Captain. Destination, Earth. Estimated arrival, 6 months. Mission parameters, prepare humanity for interstellar war." Jake smiled, his hands steady on the controls of a ship that had chosen him as its captain. Then let's go introduce our new allies to the rest of the human race. Something tells me they're going to get along just fine. The Wanderer jumped to hyperspace, carrying with it the hopes of two species and the dreams of a maintenance engineer who had learned that sometimes the best leaders are those who never expected to lead at all.